Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Excellency Esports stream. It is mid-league finals night as the #1 seed CB Rush takes on the #3 seed No Fear Wolves. It's another week in mid-league, another pre-show for you all before the matches get kicked off. Tonight, we are going through the road to finals, how exactly the teams ended up here, starting with the top side of the bracket, looking a little back at CB Rush's journey as they were able to get the first round bye, coming in to playoffs as the #1 seed, but they took down Fever swiftly in 3-0 fashion last week. Gunjin, I want to start with you, my guy. Who stood out to you in that series?
Mac, I do want to give Fever a little bit of credit. It was 3-1. Don't forget Acid's wild ride in game #1, the ace at 7 minutes that caused CBR to finally falter. But they came to this point with just an absolutely dominant regular season. We've seen splits like this before, last split with Meme City Esports and Glaive Esports, but this season, CB Rush was really dominant, and they were clear and far the #1 team. And in the matchup versus Fever, it felt like unless there was a catastrophic early game like we saw in game #1, it was CB Rush all the times, because when it came to team fighting, when it came to skirmishing, when it came to vision control, and when it came to objective control, they were always there. They were always prepared, and they just really took it to Fever in that best of 4 or in that best of 5 series in game #4.
And Icarus, I want to go to you next, talking about CB Rush and how they got here. What were your thoughts about the squad as we headed into playoffs back a couple of weeks?
I think Gunjin covered a lot of it already. He has a really great read on this team, having covered them in the last week of the semifinals for playoffs here. But a lot of how CB Rush does play just comes down from a very dominant early to mid to late game. They have strong players in every single role. They have a top side, mid, jungle, and support who all got all-pro first team in the league here. Debay being the only person not making that team, who still puts up a very consistent late game 80k playstyle for his team. So if things do kind of not go their exact way throughout the early stages, they can always rely on the consistency of their AD carry. And really the only time that we see CB Rush lose games is exactly what Gunjin was just pointing out. If an early game strategy goes catastrophic, the one downside to this team is that they are going to fight you at every stage of the game, no matter how ahead or how behind they are. So if you're able to get, an 0-10 early lead on them, maybe you can win the game, because they're going to keep throwing themselves at you. But there's also the downside that we can't forget. If they happen to win one of those team fights, they're going to start pulling away with another lead for themselves in the mid game. And you always got to be careful about fighting off against CB Rush, because they have strong lanes. They have even stronger mid to late game team fights.
That's what they've been known for throughout the roster's tenure here in mid-league, losing a little bot lane between seasons, but that hasn't stopped their dominance, hasn't stopped them from doing what they do best, taking over team fights. Really excited to see how this team is going to be able to perform here in finals, the finals that they missed out last season, now coming back, season 3, split 3, looking to finish off what they started. But let's go take a trip down to the other half of the bracket to see our other contender here, the #3 seed No Fear Wolves, another familiar face for mid-league fans here, coming in from what was a pretty solid showing last split, but they did get knocked out in quarters. Now, Gunjin, we see the No Fear Wolves rising to playoffs here in the summer split.
And No Fear Wolves definitely didn't have that easy of a road. During the split, they struggled. They had swaps in terms of roster. We did have Skiz heading back to the jungle with the new addition of Cornstar up top. And it was kind of that catalyst of change, because in the middle of the split, they were kind of dead in the water. They weren't really winning a lot of series. They were kind of breaking series open 1-2 and kind of losing to some of the competition around them. Once they got the addition of Cornstar, they kind of really rallied around that top side and really kind of pushed through into the playoffs, obviously taking that initial 3rd seed facing off against the Genesis Reform, which was a series that was marred due to some technical difficulties. And so we don't want to explore much on that, but this series versus Bucky Stratosphere, Or sorry, not Bucky Stratosphere, Death Cards Academy. I can't see color, I can't see logos. It is hard for me. But versus Death Cards Academy, it was a Game 5 banger going all the way to 12 a.m. in the morning. We had these two teams just battle after battle. And at the end of the day, what came in clutch, what came in kind of big for the side of No Fear Wolves was, again, that mid lane of Cute Raichu and the consistency of Epic Fail Guy, our all-pro first-team ADC.
I think you really hit it on the head there, Gunjan. The All-Star Pro first-team AD carry coming in here for the side of No Fear Wolves, alongside their new top laner in Coruscant, have been really putting up a huge performance. And while Cute Raichu is one of the solid mid laners that we've been looking at all season, he's taken a step back and been playing a bit more of a supportive role, allowing his team to pit other pressure points on the map. And we see him play a lot of tanks in the last series versus Death Cards Academy to great success towards, especially against some of the best top laners that we have in the league, like Fug Nuggler. And I'm actually going to be really curious about watching this top side of the map for this upcoming series, because you do have a little bit of role swapping coming between Cornstar, coming between Cute Raichu, and when you're facing off against our two all-star #1 top and mid laners in Frosty, in Rutledge, it's going to be a really intense matchup. I'm curious to see how they're planning on playing out these lanes specifically with their solo laners, and how many swaps we're going to be seeing, how many unique strategies and adaptations No Fear Wolves is going to be able to come up against what is arguably one of the most dominant teams we've ever seen in mid-league.
Notably, just last week, it was Cornstar bringing out the Yone surprise pick. Certainly, maybe some cards up the No Fear Wolves' sleeves headed into playoffs. Let's take a look at the overall bracket, comparing journeys, excuse me. Icarus, let me get your opinion here. Who do you think had the harder journey into the mid-league finals?
If I'm going to have to say who had the harder journey, it definitely has to be No Fear Wolves here. CB Rush, they came in with the bye. They've shown pretty dominant throughout their entire series so far. While the quarterfinals, again, weren't the most competitive matches because of the internet issues that were experienced during that, taking it to all 5 games in semifinals there versus Death Cards Academy, which was our #2 seed coming in, who had the bye already. It's a very intense series, and they got a lot of good practice playing throughout that very series itself. I'm hoping some of the practice that they're able to get there is going to be able to come in here versus CB Rush and allow them to play a little bit better here today, because last time we saw the No Fear Wolves versus CB Rush matchup, it was a 3-0 in favor of CB Rush. I'm hoping they can at least take off one game here with some of the high-end games I've been able to play in their last few weeks of the tournament.
And Icarus, not only was it a 3-0, in that game #3, CB Rush is actually lane swapping all around, and they still managed to take that game. So Mac, I'll be honest with you, it is a David versus Goliath matchup if there is one in mid-league, because CB Rush has been so dominant. They've been so kind of inevitable in this series, while No Fear Wolves has really had to claw and scrap to this position because they have struggled. Throughout the season, they've kind of struggled in terms of their identity, what they wanted to play around, and they've gone back to the tried and true classic that is Epic Fail Guy on the bot side. But now with the additions of Cornstar and Cute Raichu taking that sacrificial mid lane role, and Cornstar actually becoming this carry side top that does need a little bit of resources, but if the resources are given, can kind of take over with the addition of some more split pushing additions with the buffs to Hullbreaker. I'm excited to see, but it feels like if the game stays even, it's going to be a CB Rush win. But I'm excited to see what No Fear Wolves have kind of cooked up in this past week to really give them a surprise, because I think the series can go long if CB Rush get kind of off kilter in game #1.
Yeah, and we've kind of talked about just earlier how volatile CB Rush can end up being. We've seen Acid's wild rides between towers when they try to execute their composition to a T, and sometimes it's just not going to go well, but that hasn't stopped CB Rush in the past, and that is not going to stop them here tonight. They're going to try to make every fight go their way. The No Fear Wolves, though, hopeful they can turn around the odds and make their mark here in mid-league tonight. They're going to be battling for the crown. Let's take a look at the players on both rosters and discuss the matchups a little bit, gentlemen. Icarus, who is your X factor coming into this series? What's the player you're hoping is going to pop off here?
After watching the series last week of No Fear Wolves, getting to cast it with Cam, I'm really looking towards Cornstar in the top and in the mid lane. This player has been coming new onto the No Fear Wolves roster. We talked about him a lot so far tonight, and he's really a big factor in where No Fear Wolves has been putting a lot of the pressure and how they've been able to pick up some of these games versus other top tier teams. The Yone, the Yasuo being in the back pocket of this player, being able to play combos like the Diana in the jungle with it as well to go for the instant last breath is a huge pickup for the side of No Fear Wolves, because previously it was a lot of just scaling for Epic Fail Guy to come into the mid to late game and take over team fights. They still have that as a win condition, but now with Cornstar being a pressure point that they can apply on the rest of the map in order to pressure the solo lanes, it's a much wider opportunity here for No Fear Wolves that if things aren't going their way, they could be winning at least more than one lane and allowing cute Raichu and Epic Fail Guy to sit back, play more defensively for the team, and play these scaling picks where they have that team fight prowess. We've seen their ability to take over these mid to late game fights around objectives. Now that you have Cornstar in there with the ability to take over a laning phase, I'm going to be really keeping an eye on what he can do up against Rutledge and or Frosty.
Cornstar in the top side, Icarus. I think it's going to be a hard matchup. I think Cornstar, again, I think he's become this like hyped up rookie in this mid-league split, but he has struggled with some of the stronger top laners. And Daddy Rutledge, as he's so affectionately called by CV Rush, he can whip out those strong rating tops. So I'm kind of excited to see what that matchup is going to be. But if No Fear Wolves want to get that top side ahead, I expect it to be more, not just Cornstar getting himself ahead, but that entire team kind of sacrificing some of their lead to really put that gold into Cornstar. The lane, or my X factor I actually want to watch, is initially going to be Debay. I think he had a really good series versus Fever, a really consistent series where he was picking up picks like the Ashe Braum. It's something we've seen in other leagues, but now we've finally seen Debay whip it out in mid-league, and it looked incredibly good because the CC and the ability to kind of control these team fights is what was really important for the side of CB Rush. They don't need Debay to be this massive carry. They don't need him to deal all of this damage, but it feels like he's a really big factor in terms of these team fight shot callings and kind of when to hit the go button. And I think giving him that power to say, okay, now we go on him and this is who we kill, it's really important because it gives agency to this player, and he's done a really good job with it. I'm excited to see what he does matching up versus Epic Fail Guy in the bot lane, but I think that kind of empowering the Bay in that bot side with not maybe a carry role, but more of that initiator role is really important to CB Rush, because it kind of fleshes out this team from being kind of 4 all-stars, consistent 80 carry, to being now a group of 5 all-stars.
And Gunjin, just for a moment here, let's take the audience on a little bit of a background journey here for our image. It is Mid-League's Bizarre Adventure, in fact, our road to the finals here. Help us, what do we got here on our screen?
As you can see, we do have... Again, we have the graphic of Epic, or sorry, not Epic Fail Guy, not biased, guys. Please, not Epic Fail Guy. No Fear Wolves approaching what is the dominance, the kind of scariness, the intimidation that is CB Rush with that Kazakh stand right above him, kind of excited. Again, this is David versus Goliath matchup. Excited to see. This was drawn by my friend, incredibly talented Explosive Pebble. I will leave his links in the mid-league chat if you want to get some more commissions, if you want art like this yourself. But it was a piece that I asked for him to draw, and he drew incredibly well. It kind of showcases what this matchup is all about. It's these clashes of these teams that we had last split that couldn't get it done due to issues of their own or issues due to scheduling, and now they finally come back. They finally made the long road back, Mac Dewey, and we're both excited to see it, as well as Icarus.
Icarus is going to be hopefully right back. Gunjin, let's take a look at your highlighted matchup to watch for this series. We have got 2 insane players in the mid lane to keep our eyes on.
As you can see, Mac Dewey, Gunjin's lane to watch. Icarus is back. Icarus, my lane to watch, mid lane. It's not That's surprising, but it's incredibly exciting. I think Cute, Raichu, and Frosty, all-pro first team mid lane for Frosty and all-pro second team mid lane for Cute Raichu. These have been my standout mid laners, and you can see it. Frosty himself has solo carried series. He has been the difference maker for his team. He's actually been my MVP for the split, but the votes aren't out yet, so I'm not going to leak it. No leaks! But Frosty's really been my MVP because he's been able to get it done. I think the improvement we've seen from last split to this split, Frosty was a consistent mid laner last split. He wasn't all-pro. To now, he is all-pro first team and not looking like an MVP level candidate. And I think the development of Cute Raichu as well, switching over from that top side to mid lane, now is kind of really taken over as not only a roamer, team fight initiator, consistent damage dealer, all of these AP mages, the Azir play, the Azir highlights, MacDo. I know you lost your voice casting his Azir highlights. We love to see it. I'm so excited to watch this lane because I think that for both teams, this is the matchup that's really going to decide it. If No Fear Wolves have kind of a chance in this matchup, it's going to be off the back of Cute Raichu roams. And for the side of CB Rush, if they want to establish that dominance, if they want to just put the foot on the neck, it's going to be Frosty really controlling that mid lane.
Icarus, you did see Cute Raichu in action last week through that grueling 5-game series. How do you think he's going to do in this critical matchup against CB Rush Frosty?
I'm really interested to see how the new composition and playstyle of No Fear Wolves is going to be pairing up against CB Rush here when you're coming against the full court press that they typically like to bring. We've seen Cute Raichu put himself on a little bit more of a back foot, playing some more defensive champions or going for those tanks in order to pick up the top side role for his team. I want to see him back on the majors. I want to see him go toe-to-toe against Frosty in this series, and I think that if he's able to get his hands on the Azir and look for the same playmaking potential that he was able to get just a few weeks back, that we're going to see some very killer performances coming outside of No Fear Wolves. I'm also really curious, less about some of the lanes, but looking directly into the jungle, because a lot of the times the early game tempo for both of these teams is determined by the jungler, and Acid, being the all-pro for the side of CB Rush, is a very powerful jungler who likes to go to set up his team, but it is going to be one of the weak spots that I think that the side of No Fear Wolves can attack and is going to be able to take some advantages off of. And if we're looking for who's going to have the most impact, who's going to have the most amount of tempo control throughout the early stages of this game, it's always the junglers. And with the nature of these two junglers, they're going to be clashing a lot, and I want to see how these teams are able to play around them and how they're going to be able to come into these early game stages, these early game fights with their rotations and all the different lane matchups that we have potentially coming in here in order to make sure that the team who wants to win the early game is able to get their jungler on tempo and ahead.
Yeah, the tempo so critical. Both of these junglers headed into the finals, hopeful to make a big impact. Acid, Gunji, we saw last week, it felt like he could pull just about any pick off. The Hecarim was insane, and that's not even a terrific meta option. He's got some other tools in his kit. What do you think about him headed into finals?
I think I'm excited to see what Acid can whip out, because again, we saw kind of that old classic Acid from Spring Split whipping out the Hecarim, kind of being the carry for his team, funneling all of those early game resources, and then he takes over with a more aggressive Hecarim build. I'm excited to see it. I do think that there are some pitfalls, like Icarus mentioned, something that we didn't see, and I kept calling out, Diana was never part of the draft. It is going to be something that No Fear Wolves does like to play some incredibly strong meta jungler and can kind of counter Hecarim because of her early skirmishing, her ability where she doesn't really need items to make plays happen. And so if Acid kind of opts for that farming style, then Skiz can really try and make something happen in that early side and really take over. So it's going to be interesting to see the kind of the balance, because I think Acid, obviously all pro first team jungler, we've kind of all seen that he is the guy. He's that guy for the jungle. But I want to see if Skiz can respond, because there are some holes in terms of his champion pool that we haven't seen explored. I don't expect the Kha'Zix Talia to come out, MacDo, but if we do see it, I'm excited. The stand is representing Kha'Zix for a reason, and I'm super excited to see what this jungle matchup does. I think it's going to be really important for the early lane state, but it is one of those situations where I think the meta and kind of the comfort might kind of have a really good juxtaposition.
And going into a best-of-5 series, it's kind of daunting to try to take on this CB Rush roster because the Kazakhs, the Talia that we've mentioned so far, are pretty much auto bans, leaving you with only one ban of flexibility. Icarus, if you're on the side of No Fear Wolves, how are you going to be attacking this draft?
You have to take away the Talia. You have to take away the Kazakhs. There's no giving those two over to these main champions. In terms of where you go from there, honestly, it's less about looking about what you can take away from your opponents and more about what can you pick up for yourselves. What is the play style that you want to be going for here if you're the side of No Fear Wolves? A lot of the times, if you focus too hard on trying to counter your opponent, you lose track of your own strengths. I think that's going to be the biggest thing I'm looking at here for No Fear Wolves. Are they able to keep a secure vision of their own identity? Are they able to stay on track with how they've been able to win games so far? Or are they going to get lost kind of trying to match the tempo of CB Rush and how they play their game, which is, again, that full court press style that has been so dominant from this entire series?
I will say, Icarus, one of the things that we haven't considered, if you have to ban Talia Kazakhs, then it kind of leaves open space to pick any of the meta champions, right? It's one of those situations where we don't talk about it, but having to force ban these really specific key picks kind of leaves the draft a lot more open. I think it kind of leaves a little bit more ability for No Fear Wolves to really go meta. Champions, Mr. Yorick, maybe we'll see Mr. Yorick, probably not, but it could match up well into Rutledge's Ilawi we saw last week as well. So I'm excited to see. I think the especially game number 1 is going to be incredibly wild because both teams have a lot of space to try stuff out. I think it's going to be super interesting, Mac Dewey, but I want to know, we are at that point, Mac. Who are our predictions? Because I have a very strong opinion, but I want to let you guys go first.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Gunjin. You're always an absolute gentleman. You read my mind almost. I was like, guys, we got 4 minutes until draft time. What are we thinking headed into this series? Gunjin, my prediction, lock it in, CB Rush 3-0.
Wait, Mac, that's not that exciting. Come on. Wait, what? You're the guy. You're supposed to root for the underdog. You're supposed to cheer for the little man. 3-0 CB Rush, that's it?
That's what I'm going with. That's what I'm feeling for tonight, Gunjin. I'm gonna stick with my gut. I'm gonna lock in the perfect prediction. You know, I'm not about play nice and keep everyone's feeling safe here for the sake of a safe prediction. No. We gotta go with what the Mac gut is feeling in CB Rush here. Rutledge started the season, Gunjin, looking for that revenge, wanting to bring home that big old boat, get that ship, take it up north, and I think they're going to run away with it.
That's like a straight brain pull coming out from Mac Dewey here. He's just like, you know what? No gut, no heart in this 3-0 CB Rush. It's easy peasy. I'm going to go with my gut here. It's not going to be too far different. I think it's a 3-1 in favor of CB Rush. And if No Fear Wolves wins the game, it's going to be most likely the first or second game in this series here whenever they go to switch sides. If they lose the first one, they'll switch sides and maybe pick up a win. If they win the first one, though, I think CB Rush is going to have a pretty good read after that. That's typically how CB Rush has played their series, is they maybe drop one game going a little too hard, and from there they clean it up real quick and they're able to take over the rest of the series.
Guys, I'm going to be a little bit more adventurous. I'm going to go with my gut. 3-1 CB Rush. That's what we're going with. A little bit adventurous, but I agree with Icarus. I think that No Fear Wolves do have the team fight capability. I think they play team fights really well, and I think the addition of Cornstar kind of adding that split push threat could kind of threaten CB Rush into some kind of indecisive decision-making around these big objectives. I still think that CB Rush is far away the better team. I think their macro is cleaner. It feels like when CB Rush win a game, it's almost like an anaconda just wrapping around a body and just choking you out. They just suck the life out of you. Their vision controlled, their macro, it's immaculate. For the side of No Fear Wolves, it's always gritty. It's always, they have the heart to win these fights. I think they have the players as well. But can you string 3 games in a best of 5? I don't think so. I think it will be 3-1 for the side of CB Rush.
Cornstar Epic, see you guys in the chat. We all on the casting desk wish you nothing but the absolute best. We're going to be here all night, baby. Is it going to be a 5-game series? We certainly hope so. We got the AM Grind coffee ready and brewed for a long night of League of Legends action. We hope you all stick around for what is sure to be a fantastic conclusion to the Mid-League Summer 2021 split. Don't click out of that browser. We're going to start with game number 1 draft in just a little bit.